A new book by former House Speaker John Boehner has Washington buzzing. In his new book, On the House, a Washington Memoir, the Ohio Republican does not hold back from condemning the modern Republican Party for its extremism and polarization. The former speaker, who retired from public office nearly 6 years ago, is also taking his criticisms of former President Trump a step further, writing that Trump, quote, incited that bloody insurrection for nothing more than selfish reasons. The memoir takes a look back at his rise on becoming one of the most powerful figures in government and his efforts to corral the members of his party. Let's bring in former House Speaker John Boehner in right now, joining us from Marco Island, Florida. Mr. Speaker, it's so good to see you.
Nice to see you and good to be with you.
Thanks so much for joining us, sir. So let's get straight into it. Why did you wait until now, when your party is in the minority and out of the White House, to share this memoir, to write this book?
Well, it certainly had nothing to do with where the Republican Party is today. By the time I got out of Washington, the idea of writing a book wasn't too entertaining to me. So by the time I got interested in writing a book, it took me a couple of years to get it done. And so I would say the timing is rather accidental as opposed to any kind of a purposeful timing.
In your book, you write that you're happy to be away from Washington because you're really not sure if you belong to the Republican Party that former President Trump created. If that's the case, then what party do you belong to? And, what's your prediction for the future of the GOP?
Well, listen, I'm a Republican. I would describe myself as a traditional Republican. I believe in spending within your means. I believe in a strong national defense, traditional Republican principles. It's just that some in the party these days seem to think that making noise is more important than governing. And I didn't go into politics or go to Washington just to make noise. I went there to do something on behalf of our country.
So, Mr. Speaker, let's talk about the genesis of perhaps where we are right now. In your book, you describe the backlash that you faced from some conspiracy theorists in the Republican Party when you acknowledged yourself that former President Obama was in fact born in the United States, given his Hawaiian birth. But you also went on to say, and I remember vividly on Meet the Press, you went on to say that it was not your job to tell the American people what to think. And you contrast that with Senator John McCain when he was running for the presidency, who actually did push back on people who suggested that Barack Obama was not born in the United States, and other things that they suggested about the former president. So the question for me is, should it have been part of your job to condemn this type of rhetoric from the very beginning, given how the conspiracies have metastasized within the party over the last couple of years?
Well, listen, I thought I did the responsible thing by making it clear on Meet the Press that the state of Hawaii had issued a birth certificate for Barack Obama. I didn't think it was I didn't think I was making news until the next day when, my goodness, I got flooded with all this hate mail because I said what I thought was true. And I also said, it's not my job to tell people what to think. My job is to be straight up with people, honest with people, and let them draw their own conclusions. I can't go out there and refute every conspiracy theory there is. I wasn't going to then, and I won't do it today.
But just, Mr. Speaker, looking back now, should you have? I guess that's my question because of where we are right now.
Well, hindsight's 20/20. And this movement, if you will, didn't happen overnight. It was day by day. Here I am in the middle of this firestorm. It doesn't provide a lot of time for reflection. But clearly, now that I've been out of office for 5 years, I have a little more time on my hands. You can begin to look back at some of what happened and realize, yeah, I could have done this or could have done that. But listen, I did what I thought was right at the time. I'm glad I did what I did, and no regrets that I couldn't have done more.
You write in your book that you became the mayor of Crazy Town, but some people have sort of pushed back and said, well, you kind of invited some of the crazies in. To say Crazy Town back then is one thing, but now we have, representatives that back and support clear conspiracy theories from QAnon and other things that have popped up on the internet. I'm wondering, you said sort of hindsight is 20/20, but I'm wondering, when you hear critics say, well, you opened the door and this is what we have, how do you respond?
No, I didn't open the door. The American people opened the door. Those who showed up and voted in Republican primaries opened up the door and elected some, frankly, pretty radical people. And then over the years, that part of the party continued to grow. And so, yeah, there's some people out there who believe in some really crazy things. I don't. Again, my job, though, is to be straight up and honest with people, which is what I did every day. In my book, there's a list of Boehnerisms. The one I'm probably most fond of is this. I would tell my colleagues, if you do the right things for the right reasons, the right things will probably happen. Just don't worry about it. I lived my life that way, did my job that way, and frankly, it worked out pretty well.
So one thing about doing the right thing, Mr. Speaker, you write that the GOP should work extra hard to reach out to Black and Hispanic voters. But many people see the recent GOP-led voting restrictions as a way to prohibit or to stop people of color from actually taking part in the political process. What's your take on some of these recent actions that we've seen in certain states, like, for example, in Georgia?
Listen, I was involved in fixing election laws in Ohio back in the mid-'80s when I served in the Ohio General Assembly. But back then, every time there was an effort to fix the voting laws, typically it was done in a bipartisan fashion. And I would hope that would continue because people have to have faith in their election system. There needs to be integrity in that system, and people need to believe in it. And yeah, I know there's all kinds of states talking about doing things to what I would guess to bring more integrity to their voting system. I'm not going to comment on what they're doing because I'm not that familiar with it. But the fact is, the Republican Party, if it's going to continue to exist, needs to have people of color and has to have more diversity. I mean, for God's sakes, a lot of people of diversity are natural fits for the Republican Party. We ought to open our arms to them and invite them in.
You mentioned earlier that you are a Republican, that you are a traditional Republican in favor of being fiscally conservative. I'm wondering your take on the spending that we have seen, obviously under the Biden administration, but before that, obviously under the Trump administration, there was a massive amount of spending because of the coronavirus pandemic. What's your take and what's your concern for the country? Because these bills need to be paid.
Well, listen, when you have an emergency like the coronavirus, I understand the spending that had to take place to rescue our economy and to try to keep people employed. But overall, when it comes to spending, it's real simple. In your home, you can't spend more money than what you bring in. Can't do it. If you're running a business, you can't continue to spend money that you don't have. Well, guess what? Your government can't do it either. And so at some point, somebody's got to pay the bills. And all we're doing now is spending money and giving the bills to our kids, our grandkids, and our great-grandkids. Frankly, I think this is unfair to future generations, and Congress ought to get serious about tackling their spending problem.
Mr. Speaker, as you probably are aware, in a speech to GOP donors on Saturday, former President Trump is reported to have slammed Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, calling him a, quote, dumb son of a you-know-what, and a stone-cold loser for accepting the results of the November election. As you know, it's been decided time and time again in court that President Biden won the election fair and square. You yourself have acknowledged that multiple times. I've seen you doing interviews. You've written about it in your book. So the question becomes, given what you just said about including, for example, to welcoming people of color into the tent of the Republican Party, how does the party loosen itself from the grip grip of former President Trump and the lies that he has peddled to the American people time and time again?
Well, listen, the Republican Party isn't about personalities. It's not about one person. It's about a set of principles. And Republicans need to go back to our traditional principles as of the Republican Party and focus on the principles. When we focus on who we are as Republicans, we'll find out it's not about this personality or that personality. It's about who we are as a party. And so that's pretty straightforward in terms of how I look at it these days.
I got one more question for you. I'm curious your take on this. Why do you think, because you mentioned that, you didn't usher in the crazies, it's the voters that did. Why do you think so many millions of Americans voted for Donald Trump in the last election, and why do you think he lost?
Well, listen, I think he got a lot of votes because his policies with regard to the economy were very well received, and the economy reacted accordingly. I think, a lot of his policies were traditional Republican policies. Certainly not all of them. But when you get into an election, sometimes it's about policies, sometimes it's about personalities. And when you look at the election, I've got to tell you, I was surprised that it was as close as it was. Because, Joe Biden, I've known for 30 years. He's a good guy. And he's what I would call a traditional Democrat. And so, but it was a close election. How he got that many votes, Donald Trump, I don't know.
Interesting. Mr. Speaker, I was perusing Twitter this weekend, and I saw an interesting series of tweets from Ryan Grimm at The Intercept, and he tweeted a story, and I wanted to check with you about this. He said that at some point in D.C., you were turned on to Uber. Somebody told you about Uber, and you started taking Uber, but you didn't realize that you had set the settings on your phone so that, because you said to a colleague, yeah, I'm taking this Uber, and there's a bunch of people that get in the car with me, and we drive all over Arlington and drop them off. I don't know what's up with that, but hey, whatever, I'm going to go with it. And you didn't realize until someone said to you that you were using Uber Pool and not Uber. Is that true?
Well, this story has been exaggerated more than you could ever imagine.
Okay, set the record straight.
The first time I went to, right after I retired, I still had a security detail for a few weeks, but I thought, I've got to go out to the Maryland suburbs. I think I'll try this Uber thing. My staff had put the app on my phone, and so I went to order up a car. And next thing I know, I get this message that I'm riding with Caroline. Well, I don't want to ride with Caroline, so I canceled this thing. And I order another car, and this guy, I've got 4 people in the car already. We don't have room for you. I thought, I don't want this. I want my own car. So I did it again, and my God, this guy must have been sitting outside my apartment because next thing I know, I get in the car, a 1994 real little Toyota Corolla, and the guy doesn't speak much English. It was all brake, all gas, and I said, I don't want Uber Pool. The guy says, I can't do anything about it. If I get ordered to stop, I got to stop. So for 45 minutes, I'm in the back of this car, dying over the fact that, my God, we're going to pick somebody up, and they're going to get in the back of this car and wonder what in the hell is the Speaker of the House doing in an Uber Pool. Now, once I got there, once I got to my destination, I figured out what I did wrong. So when I Ubered back, I had no problems at all.
That's
a great story.
It's a great story.
But the story got all over Washington, and everybody decided to expand the story over the years.
So great.
Lovely. Former Speaker John Boehner, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you.
So we want to remind you that the book, On the House, a Washington Memoir, goes on sale tomorrow.